All right, hello everyone. Sorry to be so gruff, but I'm having major computer issues and stuff like that pisses me off. Anyway, how many passwords do I have to know? And, anyway, um, this is not the first time that I'm recording this for the day, but welcome to my channel. And this channel is for educational purposes. We take a look at great theories of everything ancient and modern and try to help you and help me use these things in our own lives in order to work on our quest for better spiritual, mental, and physical health, to round out our holistic worldview, help us with our paradigm shifting, and our awakening 5D consciousness, which I'm right now practically asleep to. But today is the 64th video that we've done on Daniel Ingram and his book called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. And this book is, you got to pay attention to the title. It's not about Buddhism as a religion per se. It's really the core teachings. You just get the core teachings and you try to kind of avoid the rest of it. Everything, especially limited hangouts and religions, they have a core to them that can be useful, but you can also get caught by it. So you want to get in there, get what you need, and get out. And Ingram has, I think, done that. He's, in fact, maybe he did get trapped a little bit, but emerged to tell the tale and is now going to tell us how to avoid going down all those dead-end streets that he went down when he was experiencing this. So Ingram spent many meditation retreats over in the Far East at monasteries, doing 18 to 20 hours of meditation per day for even months at a time, and picking the brains of tulkus and lamas and sayadaws and whoever else over there, and has brought this back and put it into English on a silver platter for us. And so we should appreciate that work. He explains things pretty clearly, and he's really focused on explaining, in particular, insight meditation, which is the meditation that will lead you to wisdom, according to him, and lead you to alleviate suffering for yourself. And he's talking about some of these different models of enlightenment. In the past videos, we've been talking about a lot of the stages of enlightenment. So the cycles that you go through as you do your insight meditation, which is really an investigation into your five senses and your mental impression. So your six sense doors, and you're investigating all of your sensations for the three characteristics, which are impermanence, dissatisfactoriness, and no self. So all of your sensations have those characteristics, and as you recognize that, you get better and better, and you go through these cycles. And when you go through the cycles, then you wake up by you awaken, or you gain wisdom by degrees. So he's talking right now about the Theravada four-path model, which he has a lot of critical analysis for. And then after that, he's going to be talking about his own revised four-path model. So the four-path model is like, okay, I went through the cycle once, and by doing that, there are certain tells that you gain, certain perceptual barriers that you break through, such as you don't feel greed or hatred. That's just one example. Okay, let's start from here. Then, if you try to find living examples of those who are out past second path, or the second cycle, by the standard models, people suddenly get vague and talk either quiets down or becomes full of zealous bluster and pontification. Hints are put out there that so-and-so might be third or fourth path, but then everyone is watching them to see if they do things that might imply that they still have emotions related in any way to greed and hatred. In this way, the whole topic gets covered in this neurotic mass of complexity, shadow stuff, and reality theory conflict. What the models at their best are attempting to say is that the sense of the observer, center point, continuous and separate subject, watcher, or however you want to describe the sense that there is some self at the center of all this stuff that so compellingly seems to be divided into over here and over there, is, in fact, just a bunch of sensations. When these begin to be perceived as they are, the sense of how special the center point is begins to lose its grip on perception, which begins to become broader, more inclusive, and more even in its basic treatment of and interaction with phenomena. Accomplishing this is fundamentally a matter of direct sensate clarity about those processes as they occur, hence the simple beauty of insight practice. When this is better understood and becomes part of our baseline way of experiencing, there doesn't seem to be so much of a this side and that side. This perceptual improvement reduces the imagined mental dance involving attempts to get away from that side when it is bad, get to that side when it is good, or just tune out the whole thing when it is boring. Thus, the system functions better as it gets better at realistically perceiving the information coming into it. As these perceptual insights encounter old, outdated emotional patterns based on the previously poor way of perceiving reality, there can be transformation of those patterns. This is a very tough topic to talk about and even harder to map. It certainly doesn't sell as well as saying, do these things and you will be free from all negative emotions. Or worse, we did these things and so are free from all negative emotions. And so you should worship us, give us donations, support our center, buy our books, give over power to us, think of us as very special, divine, or extraordinary, stand in awe of us, sleep with us, allow us to act like raving lunatics, etc. I think you get the picture. Thus, what really happens is that aspects of the misperception that seems to make specific categories and patterns of the causal sensate field into a separate self are reduced and then stop. However, many of the traditions advertise eliminating negative emotions and the sensations of all forms of craving or aversion, even things like hunger and thirst. The two couldn't be more different, and yet they are described as the same. Okay, this section is called a revised four-path model. Here is my revised version of the four-path model. It is the primary model I use when describing awakening, talking about my practice, and helping others practice. I think that using the original terminology and revising its definitions allows a lot of the most universally applicable and least culturally conditioned information from the Pali Canon to be used today, thus maintaining a link to that precious great work. However, I realize that using terminology that already has such deep cultural and dogmatic resonance may be a problem. For those who want something new, I will shortly present a rephrasing of this model that I call the simple model. In the revised four-path model, stream enterers have discovered the complete discontinuity that is called fruition and sometimes called nirvana, as in texts such as the Abhidhamma. This is the first of two meanings of nirvana, with the other being waking, walking around, day-to-day experience of fourth path. Stream enterers, that's second path, at the end of the second path, I believe. Stream enterers cycle through the jhanas, know that awakening or some different understanding from the norm is possible, and yet they do not have such a different experience of most sensations from those who are not yet stream enterers. They may correctly extrapolate a lot of good Dharma insights from momentary experiences, particularly far along in high equanimity and the 3 moments before fruition. But this is not the same as living there all the time. In fact, most stream enterers have a very hard time describing how their minds have changed in terms of their everyday perception, except that they cycle and can understand the Dharma in ways they never could before. Those of second path have now completed a new insight cycle. If they attain this within a tradition that maps this process in something like this way, they will understand the process by which awakened beings make further progress and equate progress with further cycles of insight, which is partially true. Strangely, psychological issues tend to be a bigger deal during this particular path, and psychological development often more becomes interesting and important to those of second path in some way. More model-obsessed intellectual or analytical practitioners at second path may get very into fractal models, consciousness models, enlightenment models, various integrative theories, etc. By this point, many people, though certainly not all, have at least some understanding of the basics of the shamatha jhanas, which are the concentration states of mind, or trance states. And these can be very fascinating. What they may be most bothered by is that despite cycle after cycle of practice, duality remains the predominant experience most of the time. Their capacity to appreciate finer points of Dharma phenomenology, such as sub-cycles, sub-jhanas, sub-jnanas, and the like, will be generally superior to stream enterers, but there is a range and wide individual variation in phenomenological and analytical ability, both of which can be significantly improved by training. Third path individuals have shifted their understanding of progress beyond those of second path and begin to see that they can perceive the emptiness, selflessness, impermanence, luminosity, etc. of many sensations in daily life. Perception tends to get broader, more spacious, more expansive, more through and through, with awakening being now more of a waking, walking around experience. This can be a long developmental process from the first time they notice it to when it becomes a nearly complete experience. Thus, third path tends to be a long path, though it doesn't have to be, with individual variation being significant and affected by both natural ability and formal training. At the beginning of third path, most practitioners think, I'll just complete more cycles of insight as I did before, and this will do the trick. They don't understand yet what it is they have attained, or its deeper implications. By the mature stage of third path, which for most can take months or years to show up, The practitioner is more and more able to see the selfless centerlessness, luminosity, etc. of phenomena in real time, so much so that it can be very difficult to notice what artificial perceptual dualities remain. Rigpa, R-I-G-P-A, is a nuanced and subtle term from Dzogchen, meaning something along the lines of the clear light of the natural awakened mind, the ultimate nature of reality, and is meant to help point to something essential about the nature of consciousness. I don't want to go into an in-depth discussion of Rigpa, but I do wish to point out the oft-noticed phenomenon that fascination with terms like Rigpa and feeling that they now seem very important to one's practice and what one is experiencing is common in this territory. Fascination with the concept of Rigpa, as well as related concepts such as luminosity, ground of being, and the like, is not diagnostic of this territory, as unawakened scholars may have similar fascinations. But if you are up into the path of awakening and are noticing that those terms seem to have a lot more experiential relevance, then the advice in this section may be helpful. I get a moderate amount of questions from people in the general territory of the first two paths about how to attain the next two paths, as they begin to recognize rightly that they are missing something more fundamental than that must apply to everything. Thus, I include here some advice that people have said that was helpful to them for attaining third path. 1. Continue to practice directly perceiving sensations arise and vanish on their own everywhere in experience, however you can do that. Direct observation of all the complexity is better, though using noting to ease into unpleasant or disconcerting patterns of sensation can sometimes still be useful. Try to notice that all experiences occur in this moving space of experience. This may sound so simple that its profundity may be missed, but it is a key to awakening. And 2, going broad and through, what you are looking for is more spaciousness, more about dissolving a significant chunk of what seems to be observing, doing, controlling, analyzing, and the like. Take on more of the sensations that seem to make up you and those core processes. Who am I? Practices may be of value here. Pay attention to both who is asking the question, the answers that result, and where in space they occur. Mindfully explore with natural curiosity how to dissolve the artificial boundaries that seem to delineate whatever seems to be you from everything else, meaning the rest of what happens in what seems to be space. Play around with investigating that moving line. How do you know what the edge is between what seems to be you and not you? Viscerally, perceptually, vibrationally, texturally, geographically, volumetrically. Identify and become familiar with any qualities of experience or pattern of sensations that seem to really feel like you. Then notice the 3 characteristics of those patterns again and again, more times than you think you should have to. Regard your cherished ideals and the patterns of sensations that make up those ideals about what you think meditation practice will get you as more sensations to observe. If you can do this at the level of fluxing, shifting patterns of suchness, it is easier. Whatever level you find yourself at is the level you can work with, as it is all the same from that point of view that includes whatever is going on as both practice and the foundation of realization. And knowing that simple fact can help a lot. This is a good time to check out Dogen and his practice enlightenment emphasis. Traditions that emphasize dangerous concepts such as ground of being might be more helpful now than they might have been earlier, if you can take them with an appropriately huge grain of salt and eventually see beyond them. Really allow experience to show itself. Really allow luminosity to show itself. Really allow things just to happen as they do. Less control, more direct understanding of that natural unfolding, more noticing of how the sense of control occurs at all. What it feels like, how that set of textures and intentions sets up a sense that there is a you that is doing anything, and how obviously wrong that is. Feel into what seems to be looking, asking, wanting, and expecting, and investigate all of that. Do not do this forcefully. Instead, skillfully and subtly coax those patterns into the light of awareness that sees through their clever tricks. There are only so many trick patterns. Learn from them and see them for what they are. The right feel for this is the same as the way you must look just slightly to one side of the Pleiades to see them clearly. It is almost as if you must sneak up on core processes so gently that they don't notice and can be taught unawares, except that the sneaking up process is what you are also trying to sneak up on. Thus, the slower you move attention, the more likely you will be able to catch up with yourself. Skillful, rapid vibration junkies will shift to become flow-fluxing, panoramic, gentle synchro junkies instead. Remember the exercise of the spinning swords, which I don't remember if I don't recall that. Now, I hope I've been numbering these, but this one is coming up as number 5. Notice that you can't do anything other than what happens. Try. See how these patterns occur. Try to do something other than what happens. It is preposterous, but when you try it, there are patterns that arise, patterns of illusion, patterns of pretending, patterns that if you start to look at them, you will see are ludicrous, laughable, like a kid's fantasies. Yet that is how you believe you are controlling things. So try again and again to do something other than what occurs, and watch those patterns of confusion and of pretending to be in control, which arise, and you will learn something. This is an unusually profound point. I spent many hours exploring exactly what happens during attempts to do something other than what happens, and found it high yield. Number 6, keep the 6 sense doors and the 3 characteristics in all their profundity as the gold standards for whether you are perceiving things clearly. In each moment that you aren't clear about these, notice why and debunk it right there. And then do it again and again and again. It always takes more repetitions of this process than people think it should. And so many get psyched out when it might have been but a few more iterations of the process to have succeeded in looking in that way of perceiving things, locking in that way of perceiving things. Feel the going out into new territory with its confusion, tedium, frustration, and creepiness as the prize itself. That which wants it to be known, mapped, predictable, certain, safe, and familiar is part of what you need to see it as it is. Perceive those patterns in the head, chest, stomach, throat, etc., as more shifting, fresh patterns. That freshness keeps you honest, keeps you really paying attention in that slightly violating, slightly personally taboo way that really helps in the end. If you are familiar with the Vipassana jhanas as living, familiar, felt perceptual modes, then realize that third path, due to fractal strangeness of the mind, has elements of the third Vipassana jhana to it. Third path is broad, but there is something creepy about it, as it violates the center in a more intimate way than do the earlier paths. The more you have a tolerance for something in that letting go through to the bone creepiness, and can see the good side in that, the breadth, the spaciousness, the naturalness, the directness, the completeness, the fullness, the nowness of it, the better you will do. It is a more sophisticated way of perceiving things, more beyond control, more decentralized, more spacious, braver, more free, requiring more trust, more openness, more acceptance, being more down to earth, and at the same time also more diffuse, which is an odd juxtaposition of feelings to get used to, but it is worth it. Said another way, third path is an acquired taste. Number 9, if you have boundless space, or even the fourth J4, J5. So I think that's the fourth sub-jhana of the fifth jhana. Meaning the spacious aspect of the fourth jhana that is not truly formless, but still quite open and wide. This is a really good pointer. Just also allow it to go through anything you think is you, working on that seeming boundary line as above, but allowing it to breathe, to flux, volumetrically, like moving blobs of space with texture all together. All of them just the natural world doing its rich and empty thing. Number 10, in that same way, if you have access to boundless consciousness, or even J4, J6, the fourth sub-jhana of the sixth jhana, in terms of shamatha jhanas, meaning the boundless consciousness aspect of the fourth form jhana. Oh, okay, I have it in backwards then. The boundless consciousness aspect of the fourth form jhana, so the sixth sub-jhana of the fourth jhana. The aspect where you see the luminosity of consciousness pervading the space of the jhana and its formed elements, cultivate that. There is also some element of this that is useful to realizing what third path is all about. It is not that the jhana is third path, or that third path is perfectly like these jhanas. It is that these jhanas do fill in some piece of the puzzle, which, when combined with insight, helps third path arise. If you have the last two formless realms, nothingness and neither perception nor non-perception, enter them and leave them again and again and again. This is number 11. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to put in the numbers. What remains of you when you are in these rarefied states? What falls away when you enter them? What seems the same? What perceives them? You can't answer these questions for the eighth jhana, but it is very instructive to try. Further, that glorious post-eighth jhana junction point has some interesting power to it. And after leaving the eighth jhana, Asking deep, direct, perceptual questions about perception itself can be quite powerful. What re-arises when you leave them? What do they tell you about your typical impression that you must be a body, a mind, or even something perceived? Set intentions to answer these questions before you get into that territory and watch what happens. Number 12, and the final one. There is something very immediate about third path. Thus, look for how a sense of time is formed in your experience. What does your mind do when you think a thought of past or future? How do those feel different? What is the difference in the qualities of sensations, in the way the head and eyes hold themselves, in where thoughts occur, in how they feel? Formally experiment with how a sense of time is created here and now, consciously, clearly, in this space, in this immediacy. This begins to create some of the frameworks of insight that will be very useful later. Read that sentence again and see how you immediately perceive the concept of later. Okay, we're going to stop there. So those are the 12 things about the third path that he's advising, and we will get back to going further with Dr. Ingram's revised four-path model when we return tomorrow. So thanks for tuning in today, and thanks for putting up for my little ranting there, and have a great